Acts chapter 21, verses 17 to 25. Paul's arrival in Jerusalem. We finally hit the end of all of the geographical locations that he went through on his three journeys into Asia and Greece, and now he's arrived where he was heading for, Jerusalem in Israel. It begins in verse 17, Genomenon the imon is Hierosolima, and of our having become in Jerusalem. Now our could be Luke, the possible writer of this book. Many people attribute him to be the writer, the author. And it continues in as menos edexanto imas e adelphi. The brothers gladly received us. The brothers, number 80, we go into that quite a bit in Matthew 18:15. You watch the video and we explain what all the brothers are. Jesus had brothers. And in Matthew 23:8 it says, But you should not be called rabbi, for one is your mentor, the Christ, and all you are brothers. So this is the brothers, spiritual brothers, not the physical brothers. In verse 18, Ti the epiousi isii o Pavlos sin imin pros Iacovon. And the following day, Paul enters with us to James. James, Iacovon, is the brother of Jesus. It mentions him in Matthew 13:55. It says, Is not his mother called Mary? And his brothers James and Joses and Simon and Judas, and his sisters, are they not with us? And then in Acts 12:17, and it says, And he said, Report to James and to the brothers these things. And Peter here is deferring a problem to James to be the final person to go to with these problems. Galatians 1:19, Paul says, But other of the apostles I saw not, except James, the brother of the Lord. So there we know who he is, the brother of the Lord. And Jude 1:1 begins and says, Jude, the bondman of Jesus Christ and brother of James. And a Jude was mentioned in that list a little bit earlier. Continues, Pantes te paregenonto e presbyteri, and all the elders arrived. The elders, in 42:45. You can go back to our video in Acts 14:23 and explains all about the elders. From now on, I'll be using a reference to see the video. I have them listed that you can go to and goes through it in depth. Rather than going through each one of these where it mentions it into depth, you can now go back and find out what all the things that I had to say about that word here in elders, number 42:45. And basically, an elder is one of four things. He's an aged person, a person that's old, like me. I'm an elder just because I'm old. It's a status. They had the elder servant who was the longest in the service to a person. There is a rank, the rank of an elder being with the tribal chiefs and so forth. And then there is an office. An ambassador is some places where a king sends ambassadors, and they are elders as far as the Greek word presbytery. We have the word for the Presbyterian church there. It continues in 19, Ke aspasamenos avtus, and having greeted them, exegito kath en ekaston on epison o theos entes ethnisi diatis diakonias avtu. And having greeted them, he described according to each one of what God did among the nations through his service. Now, here we have the nations. Ethnicity, 1484. This is a noun. And we also have an adjective that only appears one place or two places that I know, but they're both, it's called ethnics. Matthew 18:17 says, "Let them be to you as if the ethnics and the tax collectors." And that was a brother that was sinning, ethnikos, ethnic. And then we also have an adverb, which generally has a ly on the end of it, terribly. It's a verb adjective. And an adverb is ethnikos, as the one before, but the spelling is different in Greek, where the adjective is ethnikos, is an omicron sigma, and the adverb is a omega sigma, both pronounced O, but different when you see the writing. And it says in Galatians 2:14, the only place that this word appears, ethnikos, and it says, if you being Jewish-like, so that would be like Jewish, if you being Jewishly live, and I changed it to nation-like or nationally, doesn't really make sense, so nation-like, and not like a Jew, why do you compel the nations to Judaize? And that was Paul chastising Peter, Galatians 2:14. Now the word 1484 that we have is a nation, is a noun. It's not a person. It first appears in English, as far as the Oxford English Dictionary says, around 1400 in writing. It's not Gentile, or heathen, or a pagan, which it has been translated by some translations. Those are adjectives, and this is a noun. It's a nation, and not a people, and not pagan or heathen. It describes it what it is, and the adjective describes the attribute as an adjective. If it would have been like a pagan person or pagan people, but it's not that. So it is only a nation in a noun form. We see it in Genesis 10:5. It says, from out, first place in the Greek Bible, from out of these were separated islands of the nations, ethnos, in their, or ethne, in their land, each according to language, among their tribes and among their nations. And that was the generations of Noah after the flood. The last place in the Old Testament, in Malachi 3:12, it says, and all the nations shall declare you happy, Israel, for you will be a wanted land, says the Lord Almighty. Then in the New Testament, Matthew 12:21, it says, and in his name nations shall hope. Not people, but nations shall hope. I went to a church with the people who lived behind me, and I mentioned that the word ethnos was a nation, not Gentiles. And this Gentile word is what they invented someplace in the 1400s, I suppose. And the people there got upset, said I was trying to show up their pastor, prove him wrong or something like that. But I wasn't just trying to tell them what the word meant, but they wouldn't accept it. And then lastly, in Revelations 21:10, it says, and he carried me away in spirit unto a great and high mountain. And the he would be the bondman John. By the angel being carried away, he showed to me the great city, holy Jerusalem, coming down from out of the heaven from God. So here we see now this cube. It describes it more in Revelation 21. It's a cube. Right now in the news there's information about UFOs and what they are. Well, the Bible says there's a UFO. It's the New Jerusalem, and comes down from out of heaven. Now, whether or not this is what something we see today is another story, but I don't know. Could be, might not. But then in Revelation 21:24 it says, and the nations shall walk by her light. So here we have the end of Revelation, all the terrible things happening, the New Jerusalem coming down, but yet we still have nations apparently on earth, or unless it was another planet. It doesn't say earth, but probably. And so the nations shall walk by her light, the light of the New Jerusalem. And then in Revelation 21:26, a little more, it says, and they shall bring the glory and the honor of the nations unto her, that is, unto the holy city, New Jerusalem, whatever is on that area that these nations are, will bring things to New Jerusalem somehow. Spaceships? SpaceX? Revelations 22:2 then says, and the leaves of the trees, those the ones that were in the New Jerusalem, were for the treatment of the nations. So somehow this medicinal, whatever it is, ointment or liquid or solid, goes down and it's for the treatment of the nations. So here he described all the things among the nations through his service. In verse 20, Ide accusantes, and they, having glorified God, that is, and you'll glorify the things that God has done, edoxazon ton kyrion, glorify the Lord. Eponte avto, and they said to him, Paul, theoris, you view adelphe, O brother, pose myriades isin eudeion ton pepistevkoton, kepantes zelote tu nomu eparkusi. You view over how many myriads or thousands and thousands or 10,000s, many Jews now, Christians, there are of the Jews having believed, and all are being zealous of the law. They're still holding on to the law. They're Jews, they're holding on to the law of Moses. Jesus came to fulfill the law, not to get rid of it. So it's still there, still is today. There's a law, and the law of Moses is still there. And in verse 21, then it continues, Katechi thisan they perisu oti apostasian didaskis apo moiseos tus katata ethni pantas eudeos. And they instruct concerning you, that is all these Jews, that you teach all the Jews among the nations defection from Moses. Many of these Jews now believe that Paul is going out and preaching a defection, which he's not, from the Jews. So it's very interesting. This defection, 646, appears mainly in the Old Testament, in Joshua, I think it is 22:22, 2 Chronicles 28:19, Jeremiah 2:19, and Jeremiah 29:32. All of those places, it's a defection, apostasiam. We have an apostasy as the English transliteration, more or less, of the defection from God. But in 2 Thessalonians 2:3, it says, for unless the defection should come first, and the man of sin should be uncovered, the son of destruction. That is the return of Jesus and the gathering of the elect. So this defection has to come first, which I believe could possibly be going on right now. Defection from what? Well, defection from the belief in Jesus Christ. I don't know what other defection he would have been talking about in 2 Thessalonians, because the Jews had already defected. They were still Jewish, they're not Christians, so they have defected from the things of God. So unless a defection should come first, which to me would be the Christians, then the man of sin will appear. And so they said that he's teaching a defection, what? Saying, legon me peritemnin avtus ta tekna, saying not to circumcise their children, and Paul didn't do that. Me they tis eththesi peripatin, nor to walk in the customs, ethesi, not ethnic, but ethesi, to customs, to walk in the not to walk into the customs of the Jews. Now I had some Jewish Christian friend, my best friend Rich Easton, who's passed away, went to be with the Lord, and he was half Jewish, and he still held on to that part of him. I kept his other half was at Johnston, and that's a long story, but he was holding on to the Jewish part. If you're a Jew and you want to do that, I don't think there's a problem with that, except that if God gives you a freedom and you don't take advantage of the freedom and you throw it back in his face and put yourself under the yoke of the Mosaic law, then that's an insult to the death and resurrection of Christ, who has freed you from it. But if you're doing it knowingly, that you're just doing it as a custom because you are, and you're holding up the things of the Old Testament, which you should do what God wanted. To me, well, God's the one who decides what's right or wrong. We'll let that go at that. And so then it continues. So what is it? Ti un esti. Pata, what are we going to do about it? Patas the plethos sinelthin. Assuredly, it is necessary for a multitude to come together. Akuson te gar oti elilithas, for they will hear that you have come. And he was famous. They know who he was, because he went out capturing Christians earlier and putting them in jail and so forth. Sat under the feet of Gamaliel, the head of the Sanhedrin. In verse 23, tuto un pison osi legumen. This then do what we tell you. Imperative, you do this. Isin imin andros tesares evkin ekontes f. There are with us 4 men having a vow upon eafton, upon themselves. Now we went through vows and what vows are all about back in Matthew 5:33 and mainly in Acts 18:18. So if you go back to those videos, you'll find out way more about the vows. They ended up making a vow, letting the hair grow, and then shaving it at the end, and then burning it, the hair. In verse 24, tutos paralavon, and having taken these, the 4 men, agnistiti sin avtis, be purified with them. Ke vapanison epaftis, and spend for them. Inexerisonte tin kephalin, that they should shave the head. That ends the vow. Well, this is all planned by James and the others, but it doesn't work. We'll find that out in the next section. Ke genosi pantis otion katich kinte peri su uden esti, and all should know that of which they have been instructed concerning you is nothing. It's not true. Allah stikis ke aftos ton nomon philason, but that you conform to guarding the law even yourself. So see, now Paul is still going along with the law. He's a Christian, but yet he is still doing these things. So if you're a Jew, and I have another Jewish Christian and I run into here by my house, Andy, and they can still do the things of the law, but again, with the understanding that this is just a tribute to who God is of the Old Testament, and they are tied to it. We, if you're not a Jew of the nations, not a Gentile, if you're of the nations, are free from that, because it continues in 25 and it says, peri they ton pepistevkoton ethnon, but concerning the ones having believed of the nations, not the Gentiles, but of the nations, emis epistilamen, we wrote. And being free from the law, Matthew 5:17 goes into that. And then what they wrote, it says, Krinantes me then teuton tirin avtus, having judged them to give heed to no such thing, to the things of the Jews, of Moses' Mosaic law, to no such thing, none. Emi philasasthe avtus to te idolothiton, except to guard themselves from both that sacrifice to idols, ke toema, and the blood, ke panikton, and what is strangled, ke porneon, and harlotry. And the idol, sacrifice to idols, well, I don't know what you would be today. There's nothing I know is sacrificed to idols that I would eat. And blood, I cook everything. I don't eat anything that's raw. And it says strangled, mainly because when they strangled an animal, they didn't bleed it. The blood was not poured out and then cooked. So that was now today, I suppose it's still same as not to drink the blood, to cook everything. And harlotry, which is sexual sins and behavior that people go into. So here is the plan. But what happens? A riot in the temple. Find out in the next section about that.